Okay, we're live. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 167 of our podcast, and we're going to argue net neutrality again and again and again. It just never ends. Like, you think we solve this problem, but no, we have to argue it again. And this is probably the third or fourth time this year, and probably the fourth or fifth time on this entire podcast. And our opinions haven't changed, but I think this episode we're going to talk a little more, and we're going to try to take the ISP side and say maybe we should look at it from this way. I don't know if we can, but we're going to try.
To unlock this co-host, call Comcast and sign up for the Tom Podcasting co-host plan for $19.95 per month. Thank you.
So before we get started, I just want to let's give an IoT warning shout out to Apple. In Apple's HomeKit, there's CVE, and I'm going to forget it now. It doesn't matter. 2017 something, which HomeKit has a vulnerability that you can get into someone's iCloud account and unlock their smart locks. And there's two things that come out of this. One, we talk about IoT and how you should be careful and whether they update or not. And two, Apple has fixed this, which is a good thing. They fixed it quickly. But again, it's important that if you're going to go IoT, make sure that all your devices are from reputable companies that if they've had a problem, which at this point they all should have had, that they get fixed.
Yeah, like Apple has got a good track record with this stuff for their IoT stuff, High Sierra notwithstanding. Philips, I know, has had a good track record of saying, oh, wow, there's a bug here. You reported it responsibly. Thank you. We're going to get a fix out right away. I know Google is classically really, really good with their security. So if you report something about, their hub or one of their devices that connects, they usually get that stuff fixed pretty quick. Stick to big brands, stick to big names. We say this a lot on this show, but it's all about how the company responds. Security vulnerabilities will happen. It's almost a guarantee. The thing you have to pay attention to is not whether or not a security bug surfaces, it's how the company then responds to that issue.
And I think I posted a Black Hat thing a year or two ago where Philips did get caught. There was an issue, and they quickly responded to it. I think at Black Hat, they were there and saying, we'll push this out immediately, and they did. It's one of those when you get Netgear had an issue and they were a little clueless, or Belkin, just eventually they fix it when they're publicly shamed, but at least they fix it compared to like Chinese rebranded companies. That's another thing, like Polaroid or Kodak or whatever these companies, they lend their name to products that will never get fixed. And so just again, I know it's cheap, but when you get cheap, you get what you're paying for.
Yeah, always a good thing to keep in mind.
So again, I like Philips, I like Amazon, I like Google, I like Apple. I think I'm okay with the Belkin switches. I'm not a smart switch kind of guy. I think both Quickset and Slage for the smart locks are pretty good, but again, I'm not ready for the whole smart lock thing yet.
I gotta say, it's not really IoT, but it's kind of home automation, because this doesn't connect to the internet at all. You can hook it up to a computer to update its firmware, but it has no radios. It is really dumb except for a sensor on the top, and it's not wireless at all. It's fully wired, except it's got some batteries. We're not sponsored by these people. I just love my Nito vacuum because it doesn't connect to anything. I tell it to go. I set a schedule. It's got an internal clock. It just kicks off. It vacuums and it goes away. It doesn't leak my data. It doesn't take any pictures. It doesn't have a GPS unit built in. It is a stupid robot vacuum that does everything I need it to do. So I'm very happy with it.
Gizmodo did an article about how you really don't need a robot vacuum, and I actually
saw that.
I had one. I had two of them. I had a Roomba way back when. I thought it was awesome, and then we moved and we didn't plug it in, so Roomba died a lithium ion death. And then we had the mop. Nito, maybe it was Minty. Minty has a mop that just like dies in the middle of the room. And we haven't turned him or her on yet, so I feel bad. But we keep him charged just in case.
Yeah, they're not maintenance free, right? Because my previous Nito, I did not take care of it. I didn't change his batteries. I left the same brush in. I hardly emptied them, and they will get temperamental. So now we've got like a set schedule of I'm going to change his filter on this day of the month, and I'm going to change his batteries after this 6 month interval and stuff like that. And so far, pretty happy. And he's not smart. He's a dumb vacuum.
I mean, remember Roomba put out an announcement that they're going to start selling location data of the Roomba to people, and then they quickly backtrack because
Very quickly.
Because people apparently care. That's the one thing I don't really care about, but people apparently do care where the Roomba went in the house. So
yeah, the placement of people's couches is sacred.
I mean,
we should all be aware of this.
So again, just this is your Christmas and the holidays are coming up, and the world is going IoT. I'm sure the Echoes are going to be a very, very big gift this year. I love my Echoes. The Google Homes, they're both $29. That and the Google Home, take your pick. They're both awesome. But I will say the Echo did give me streaming Sirius XM through the entire house today.
So. I love my Echo. And full disclaimer, I do work for Amazon. I do not work on those products, and I do not speak for them. But I'm very, very happy with the 3 Echoes I have in my house.
I'm up to like 7 at this point, and 2 tablets. But I will tell you, taking my Pixel XL and 2 XL and squeezing the side on my way home and just popping up and say, turn living room lights on, and it turns in as I come in is pretty awesome.
But, that is cool.
And again, when things work with all the products, life gets better. Yeah. That's what it is. And on the last topic of this, do you thank your Echo?
I do. And I didn't realize that was such a topic of conversation until I read all these stories about should we be telling our children to say thank you to AI? Because the AI doesn't care, at least not until it gets sentient and starts killing all the humans. Whereas the people who have thanked their Echoes will be spared from the robot genocide. And the people who don't, well, they'll be first in line.
Yes, my older son can't actually invoke as we call it, Madame. We cannot get he does it, his voice is too high pitched or whatever it is, he cannot invoke her. But when he does, we do ask him to say thank you. But he doesn't say Echo thank you, he just says thank you, which I guess is good enough. But because if you do say thank you, she does respond.
She does.
You're welcome. So
I wish it were more conversational. Like when I ask her to do something and she does, like sets a timer or an alarm or whatever, gives me an answer to a question, and I say thank you. I wish she would be listening for just thank you, or whatever thank you is in your native tongue, to reply back you're welcome or something like that.
So
that'd be nice.
So okay, enough of the small talk. Let's get into net neutrality. So tomorrow, whenever you're listening to this, this episode's not going to get out tomorrow. December 14th, the FCC is going to have a vote that's going to most likely turn back the Title II regulations and just completely abolish net neutrality, claiming freedom and crippling regulations and all this other nonsense. So I think, for the record, we are both pro net neutrality. We want the bits to stay independent and everything else.
Yes, we are. So here's the breakdown of what happens after the vote tomorrow. Hour 1, Netflix shuts down completely. Hour 2, every meme is erased from the internet simultaneously. Hour 3, the only podcast you can download is officially sanctioned podcast by the Department of Truth. And then it just gets worse from there.
Well, will all the fake news be eradicated?
No. Fake news is the only news. Ministry of Truth. Yeah.
So we have no science. We just have thoughts and prayers.
Yes.
Thoughts and prayers. Okay. Just thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the scary part is you're not 100% wrong, but we're not going to see anything tomorrow. Nothing will happen tomorrow.
Nothing's happening tomorrow, right? There's going to be a vote, and nothing will happen tomorrow. Stuff might not happen for 6 months. It might not even happen for a year. I don't think these changes are going to be hard and quick, right? People... It's the boiling frog problem, right? You can't just throw a bunch of stuff at people real quick and say, hey, we're going to charge you $700 for Netflix now. Have fun. There would be riots in the streets marching towards Comcast headquarters. That's not going to happen. Instead, it'll be stuff like hey, if you want to listen to, the Xfinity music streaming service, we're not going to count that against your data cap. If you want to, stream Xfinity TV on your smartphone through the Comcast app, we're not going to charge you bandwidth for that. Or, you can get 1080p streams really easily on the Comcast content or on this content that paid us money, but not this thing over here that didn't. It's going to be tiny little changes over a very long period of time to get consumers used to the idea, right? When data caps were first being proposed by all the big ISPs, right? Comcast famously said, no, we're only doing this in test markets to see how it fares, to see how people react. And the majority of people were outraged, but nobody did anything about it, right? Nobody called up their cable company, nobody canceled their service over this. And now me, somebody who was not in a test market, I am stuck with a Comcast data plan that, yes, I pay $50 extra a month to evade the data plan because I was going over it every single time because I podcast, I throw video files around to be edited, and I stream a lot of video games around, and I watch a bunch of Netflix, and data caps hurt that.
So back when that was proposed, Comcast did 250 gigabytes, and they said nobody hits this. Nobody. And if you do, you should be on a business plan. And that was true. Literally nobody hit it. And when you got hit, nothing happened. And then when you got hit a second time, nothing happened. And the third time, nothing happened. And then recently last year, they started enforcing it. And that's when you started getting your letters. And they said, oh, for a business account, which is the exact same thing, but it's going to cost you whatever, $50 more a month. You don't have these caps. And everyone just got used to just being a little more careful.
Yeah. So now, because I'm not paying for cable TV, instead my extra $50 is going to evade data plans so I can use Netflix. So the long con in all of this is they're trying to make cord cutting and not paying for cable more expensive, right? Cable TV makes a bunch of money. Not as much money as it probably could, thanks to all of these backroom media deals. And, when you want ESPN, you have to get 200 other channels that nobody ever watches, it's stupid stuff like that. But it is a big driver of revenue.
You know how much a DIY channel cost me? The DIY channel just cost me $25 a month. So my contract was up with Fios, and I said, I think I'm paying $170. I was paying $145, and then it got kicked into whatever special pricing for the last 6 months, and they would not let me out of it because it was contracted. So finally, I can renew, and I'm like, I'm paying $170. That's way too much. You can get rid of a lot of channels. You can the $150. I have $150 symmetric. That's fine. Give me a much better price. I'm looking at $150. So here I am telling them, what I don't need Showtime. You can get rid of that. I don't mind paying $150. That's about what I need. And they come back and say, well, we have this package. You get gigabit Ethernet, gigabit internet. So now, and that's going to be cheaper than $150 symmetric. So now I have gigabit for, I'm reading it now, $124 for like some period of time, and then it goes to $160. So I save $10 and I gain gigabit internet, but it's not the net neutral internet. I'm sure it's going to change.
Oh yeah.
Or I have cable. So with the cable package, I'm not going to see everything's going to be zero rating for me. Probably.
Maybe. It all depends. It always starts as zero rating, and let's be honest, right? A company that I've been very, very satisfied with their service is totally not net neutral. And they haven't been for a while, and people have been calling them out on this to really no effect at all. T-Mobile. I love T-Mobile. They do exactly what they say. They charge me a flat rate for everything I want and more. They don't bug me. They don't pester me. And I continue paying for their service because it's good service. But they have onboarded certain things for zero rating, right? YouTube videos at a certain quality, Netflix videos at a certain quality, various music streaming services at certain qualities. But if you go above that quality, you're now getting into their data caps, right? So here's the issue. People love zero rating. They love saying, hey, I can watch as much Netflix as I want on T-Mobile. The issue is if I make Tom's movie streaming service and I go through the effort and I set this thing up and I am ready to go toe-to-toe competing with Netflix, right? MySpace versus Facebook, it's on. I can't do that effectively because I can't make these backroom deals with T-Mobile and Comcast and Spectrum and AT&T and Verizon and Bob's backroom or backdoor ISP because I'm just a small player. I'm not a giant company with a ton of money. I can't make the deals necessary to, compete on a level playing field with someone like the likes of Netflix. So what we're going to be stuck with in the future, because the playing field is no longer level, is we're going to be stuck with a cable TV-esque situation where we are stuck with MySpace for the rest of our lives, where a Facebook can't come in and wipe MySpace off the map because it's just a better experience. Instead, we have MySpace paying, backroom money to ISPs to make sure that they never lose control. And that's the issue. That's the major issue. Destroying net neutrality makes the internet just a ridiculous, uncompetitive place. You cannot compete. It's no longer a level playing field. And the innovations we've seen on the internet today, because someone like Facebook can come in and destroy MySpace, because somebody like Spotify can come in and wipe the floor with Pandora. We have seen great services and great businesses pop out of the internet, and without a level playing field, without the ability to come in and challenge somebody who's already at the top, we're just stuck with what we have. And what we have right now, it's pretty good, right? It's pretty good, but it could be better. And that's the promise of the internet, and that's what killing net neutrality will destroy.
So I'm looking at Binge On, which is that service that you mentioned with T-Mobile. And I'm seeing things I've never heard of before. I'm seeing, like, I don't know, I'm counting 70 or so different streaming services here. So let's go with premium content. Amazon Video. Let's see. HBO Go, Showtime Anytime. YouTube Red, Showtime, Netflix, Google Play Movies, HBO Go. So Hulu. So all these things you don't think about. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going down to sports. And this is the point. BTN, ESPN, Fox Sports, NBC, MLB, UFC. I don't see two big things. The NFL, which is a Verizon exclusive, which we'll get to in a second. And I don't see what Tom knows nothing about the sports ball, but I don't see the Pac-12 in here at all. So all you West Coasters who care about Washington and Washington State, you're not part of the zero rating, and you have to pay. What T-Mobile gets not a pass on, but the way they skirt these rules is they say, we're not stopping you. You just have to fill out the form. Whatever that means, you have to fill out the form. And I think the form is you have to find a way to stream it at 480p if it's on our network. Otherwise, it goes against your cap.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. It's a really terrible way around these rules. And this is what we're going to see initially. This is going to be the first stop of no more net neutrality, is the zero rating of preferred services. And right, T-Mobile looks really good on the surface, right? Because they've got all the big players. You don't have to use YouTube Red. You can use Netflix. If you don't like Netflix, you can go to Hulu. If you don't like Hulu, you can go to HBO Go, right? They've got all the big players. Completely discounting the people who might want to compete and might not want to have a terrible streaming service at 480p delivered to their customers. If you just throw them out, the big issue is where ISPs like Comcast, which are owned by giant media conglomerates, can come in and say, hey, the only thing we're going to zero rate is, Xfinity over Wi-Fi. So you can watch all of your cable channels over Wi-Fi, and you're not going to be billed for that at all. But Netflix, that's going to count against your cap. And as long as we're zero rating all of this stuff that you so clearly love and use, why don't we take this data cap and lower that just a bit, because the network is congested. And that was with my air quote fingers for those of you on audio, right? So then they can say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and lower our data cap. We're going to throttle Netflix. We're going to make sure that your Netflix experience is really bad to try to push you towards watching our cable network instead, where we make way, way more money because we're the service provider and the pipes.
So let's move on now to the music. And again, we're a podcast. We do this podcast. We put it on YouTube for people because it's another avenue to get our message across. But if you're trying to listen to to podcasts, I don't see Apple Podcasts on their on their music freedom. I see Apple Music.
Yep. The issue with podcasts is that for the vast majority of podcasting apps, when you go to iTunes or to Pocket Casts or to AntennaPod or whatever app you use, right? The majority of podcast apps aren't actually going to download from their servers. They're just there to provide a discovery engine for your RSS feed. So we'll submit our RSS feed, which points back to in30.net, right? When you go to Apple Podcasts and you click download, Apple looks at our RSS feed, says, yep, that's on in30.net /whatever MP3. Cool, got it. And they will pull it directly from our site. So with podcasts, you're not getting 0 rating on any of those.
And I'm not going to go through this challenge of trying to get T-Mobile to certify our little site for what we do. Well, what we do is we tell you just watch it on YouTube, but just literally go to YouTube and watch it and whatever. I hope you would, but again, I don't have the time or the effort or any of this to do it. And again, it's okay. So you want to listen to podcasts. The 0 rating is not, and we don't look, I don't personally mind it because look, it's everything I use, but here is a couple things: podcast, TuneIn Premium, the premium version, not the free version. Spotify doesn't. All of Spotify is there. I'm trying to think of services that a lot of people use that are not part of here. And like I told you, the NFL with Verizon and
is Twitch TV in the video?
That was the one. Twitch TV was not.
I watch Twitch TV every day, all day long.
And so there you go. It would be Twitch TV. But again, I don't think this is, they would have been sued by now. So I don't know if this is the exact definition of net neutral.
And that's another issue, is that these laws are fuzzy, right? We're relying on old laws. We're relying on common carrier status to make the net neutral. And it does enough, right? It offers enough protection, but it certainly doesn't go far enough for a modern internet, right? For a modern era at all. These laws were written back when the internet was, a twinkle in somebody's eye, probably even before then. So what we need to do, the permanent solution, is to actually get Congress, and I realize that everyone is tuning out now because it's an impossibility because politics. But the real solution to this is to get Congress to draft, implement, vote on, and pass a law requiring all packets across the internet, no matter what your ISP is, no matter what data center you're originating from, shall be treated equal, right? And they should be. That it's how the internet has always worked. It's why the internet is as great as it is, and hopefully, if things all work out, why it will continue to be a great thing and a great place to compete in. But you've heard these arguments all already, right? You've heard us talk about it. All of your favorite websites are talking about it. You go to YouTube or anywhere, and everyone's saying the same thing. We have to save net neutrality. Could the cable companies have any argument whatsoever?
Well, I was going to say that here's the problem. When we gave Comcast and Verizon and Optimum and all these things, Cox, we gave them huge, massive tax breaks to build out the infrastructure because we needed the infrastructure. And these companies got big on the taxpayers' back. And now they're lobbying to say, hey, if you do this, it's hurting us. We're this little company that can't provide all this data. Everyone streams Netflix and it just hurts us. We need to be a way to do all this. And unfortunately, I don't know why they're listening or how they're listening, but they're listening. I asked my very, very conservative friends, because this seems to be a Republican and conservative issue. I don't know why. Can you give me any article? Give me something. Give me a Breitbart article. Give me a National Review article. Give me anything from any news source that you deem credible. And the only thing they came up with was stuff from 2005, where they lumped wireless as part of being net neutral and how it really hurt these companies. And I go, that's more than 10 years ago. That's also before all these companies bought out content companies. So now AT&T is going to control DirecTV, and Verizon is controlling, or Comcast is controlling NBC, and Verizon's controlling the internet. And we're forgetting that now they're changing it. So it's like, oh, if you want our channels, they're free, but we're going to charge you a ton more for other stuff.
Yeah, the only argument I can come up with, it relates directly to Netflix, right? When you look at any of the big publicized traffic graphs, Netflix traffic in the evening takes up a crazy disproportionate amount of traffic across the entire internet, right? We're talking more than a third of internet traffic in the evening hours is spent watching Netflix. At least that's the case in the US. It's probably less in other countries because I guess Netflix in other countries it's terrible. At least from what I've heard, we're at most not very good. Um, and having your bandwidth saturated from a single source with one provider's content, yes, you could oversaturate a link. Yes, Netflix is pushing better, more high quality streams all the time, right? You can now on certain devices watch Netflix in 4K. That's a ton of bandwidth. And if a large segment of your population, on a certain node is everyone is streaming 4K Netflix, the network tends to fall apart. And that's for two reasons. One, of course, it's a bunch of bandwidth, but two, ISPs and service providers rely on, and it's not just ISPs, right? This is a common throughout the tech industry. It's a common throughout just about every industry. Is this idea of oversubscription, right? I've got 10 chairs, and I'm going to sell 20 seats because about half the time someone isn't sitting in that seat, right? So I can make sure that all the seats are filled all the time, because why would I be paying for an empty seat? If I'm paying rent on a seat and it's empty, I'm losing money on it. So to me, the businessman, that seat should be filled all the time. ISPs do the same thing, right? If they're paying for this big pipe to the internet, if they're paying for infrastructure, laying cable, laying fiber, and it's not being used, or it's not being used enough, then why did they spend the money to put it in? But someone like Netflix comes around where everyone wants it all at the same time, and it's a giant amount of bandwidth, and all of a sudden you're not only oversubscribed, right? You've got 10 seats and 20 people all wanting to sit in these chairs, and you just can't have that. The whole thing falls apart. Your business model doesn't work at that point because you've sold more than you have. And that's the issue that ISPs have with big bandwidth users in particular, Netflix being the most prominent example of this. There are ways around this. The biggest way is upgrade your infrastructure, right? That's not the cheap answer, but it's probably the right one. Like you said, these companies got big on using taxpayer funding to try to expand their infrastructure, and they didn't meet the bar. They didn't do a good job.
Well, there's two things you were saying. So yes, all these things at night. It's not against the law to say if you want faster speed to pay more, or even a data. I don't think a data cap is anti-net neutral. It's not cool, but it's not anti-net neutral.
It's not anti-net neutral. They're treating every bit the same. If Comcast wanted to come to me, right, it sucks, right, that I've got a data cap. I really don't like it. But that said, when I watch stuff from YouTube or Netflix, or if I watch our podcast right now in this Hangouts window, all of those bits are being counted against my data cap, and they're all counting the same weight. And that's the only thing that neutrality protects. Data caps are not a part of this.
Or you can even say, I think you can even say during prime time, we slow down the speeds on everybody. I think that's okay too. I think
as long as every bit is treated equal, right?
Correct.
Comcast could shut off the internet at 5 p.m. every day and shut it off for everyone. And there are some weeks when it feels like they're doing that because they're not exactly the most stable ISP out there. But they could do that, and it would be treating all the packets equal. They just wouldn't go anywhere. None of them. And that's okay, right? It's not a great solution, but at least it is net neutral.
So I know we're going to go long, but so one of the other arguments I hear is, well, you already have competition. So I don't know. I'm at some website. There's in my zip code. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quote unquote competition. Here they are. Optimum Online, which is the cable provider. Fine. I actually like Optimum. They're like the best of the worst of the cable companies. I will say that. But they're a small market. I have Fios and I have Verizon DSL. So those are the three big ones. Okay, DSL. And the problem is the government defined broadband as, I think, 10 megabits down or 25 megabits down.
I thought they upgraded that.
The problem is they didn't define an up channel. And what they don't tell you is these up channels are complete garbage. So on this Verizon DSL, by the way, it's $35 for 3 megabits based on whatever number they're giving me.
Ouch.
They don't tell you what the up is, but I'm sure the up is not that good.
Yeah, and here we're going to get a little nerdy here, way more nerdy than we usually do on the show. So the internet, most internet traffic, especially web browser traffic, is based on TCP, which is a cool protocol that allows you to send packets back and forth in a certain order with certain guarantees that the data will eventually get there. And if it doesn't, it's got nice built-in things to slow down the connection to try to make sure that everything gets to where it needs to go. That's a really simple explanation. There's this three-way handshake, right? You reach out to a server and you say, hey, I want a connection. The server goes, yeah, I see you. You want a connection. And your computer goes, okay, cool. I'm acknowledging that we now have a connection. And it's called a three-way handshake. That's a really, really simple explanation of what happens in TCP. But that happens a ton. It happens, millions and billions of times per second. These three-way handshakes for packets. Part of that three-way handshake, a large part of that three-way handshake, is you sending something to the server. It's your upload. So there is a point in internet connection speeds where you can have all the download in the world, but if you don't have enough upload speed, you will get capped simply by the nature of the transmission protocol. Because you can't send these acknowledgments. You can't send these, I would like to make a connection to you fast enough. So your download speed, you could have unlimited download speed. You could have a 27 gig connection, but if you don't have the enough upload to make those handshakes, your download is going to suffer and it will never be what it says on the box.
So continuing with that, so there's DSL. The problem is that people say, well, it's fast enough. They don't tout their upload speed. I mean, Fios does with remember their half fast campaign a few years ago. But then you go down. Well, we have satellite internet. You want to talk about satellite internet? HughesNet, I'm looking here, $50 for 25 megabits. And the up, listen to this, 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up with a 10 gigabyte a month data cap. 2-year contract and 50 gigabytes a month of free data between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. And then they throttle you 1 to 3 megabits after you go over.
This is really bad.
Oh, but it's competition. And it's like, well,
competition.
Yes, it's like air quotes competition. And then there's another one, Exceed Internet. Same thing, $30 for 12 megabits. They don't have an up. They don't tell you what the up is because satellite up is terrible. 12 gigabyte a month data cap for and basically what they're doing is this is where you put a little satellite dish on the back of your RV and you have it because it is satellite. But that's not really competition. And I'm lucky that I have Fios. Otherwise, it's Optimum or Comcast in your case, or the DSL provider, which we just talked about, doesn't have it. And it's like, and so Optimum or Fios, at least in my case, could go back and forth. Optimum is probably the better company, but Fios gives me the speed and they're much more reliable. But I can see Verizon fighting to change my conditions of contract.
Yeah, when it comes to competition, you really need to look at levels of service, and that's where all of this data falls apart. When ISPs say, "Oh, but there's plenty of competition. Everyone's got so many choices." Yes, I can sign up for America Online America Online dial-up right now if I really wanted to. I could dial into a modem. I don't even have the equipment anymore, but if I bought the equipment, I could dial into a modem and get a different ISP, technically. But let's be real, that's not real competition, right? The closest thing I have to competition, and I am extremely lucky, the area I live has got a community fiber network. Now, my Comcast plan is 200 down, and I forget my up, like 50 up or something. Right? It's really good. It's good. It's not the best, but I'm happy. It's way better than I had in Ohio. My community broadband is 100 up or 100 down and 50 up. So I went with Comcast. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to move, but that's competition, right? It's not really on the same playing field. If I move, I'm going to downgrade some, but at least I have the ability to go somewhere. Back in Ohio, I had the choice of Time Warner, a couple dial-up providers, Time Warner, and AT&T DSL, and that's it. And that's the case for the majority of Americans. There is no actual competition.
What was your zip code in Cincinnati?
I forget my zip code in Cincinnati, but my zip code where I lived was 45449.
45449. Well, yes, that's where you lived.
Yes, where I did live, not where I do live.
Yeah, correct. Where you did live.
Yes.
Let's find out. You have your residential. You have 8 choices: Spectrum,
Time Warner,
TV, DSL, AT&T, Cincy Bell, and Windstream.
Cincy Bell is DSL.
Yeah.
And Windstream, I believe, is a wireless ISP with huge bandwidth caps.
Yes. Okay. And then your fixed, I don't know what fixed wireless providers, Agile Networked, which has 0 stars, and Hometown Cable, which also has 0 stars, but it doesn't have 1 megabit down. I don't even know what that is. And then HughesNet and Exceed, which I read to you before. So basically, Spectrum, I guess, is Time Warner or DSL.
Yep. Yeah. That's it. And DSL is not competition for a cable network. It is absolutely not. DSL is an excuse. DSL is what you get if you have literally no other choice. I know because I've had to buy DSL before, and I was not pleased.
So we have a question while you're thinking about it. Would a VPN get around faster slow lanes, assuming the provider doesn't throttle VPN traffic? And I think the answer is they're going to throttle VPN traffic.
Yeah, they'll probably throttle VPN traffic. Thank you for the question. They would probably throttle VPN traffic. I could definitely see a world in where they say, "Oh, you need our $59.99 a month business plan," because nobody would use a VPN unless it's for their business. I could see that argument being made. What a VPN would be guaranteed is that Comcast wouldn't know where you're going, right? So, yes, all of your packets would be treated equally. I can almost guarantee that they would be equally slow. They would probably be thrown on the slow lane, throttled compared to all the other whitelisted or 0-rated traffic. But yes, they would be equal.
And then the other argument I heard, well, you have wireless. Verizon makes that case all the time. Go on wireless LTE. We're really fast. And the answer is, well, you have a data cap that's ridiculous. Like you're talking 10 gigs a month for when you're trying to stream and do all this. And when you're home, I mean, your home is where you download, and the Android update was 1 gigabyte.
Yeah, and let's be real. Some of the stuff I do not only requires fast internet, I need low latency, right? I'm connecting over remote protocols. I'm gaming. I'm doing a video game stream, right? Especially gaming. You can't have a high ping and be competitive in some of these online video games, which that's a big part of my life. I play a lot of video games because I'm a nerd. And cell phone coverage really isn't the least latent option out there. A good hardline fiber or cable network is.
So again, it's and then you have the argument, not even an argument, but well, why don't you reduce the burden of government to allow more competition in? And it's like, well, okay, but I don't have that choice. Like I can't like tell the mayor, hey, mayor, allow this other company to come in here. What are you going to do? You're going to give them tax breaks, which caused this whole problem to begin with.
Here's the issue. Here's the issue with that. So right now, Comcast and Verizon, all of these companies, they laid out their fiber networks, right? They laid out their cable networks. to start an ISP today, you can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to use the existing cable in the ground because that's a public utility. That doesn't exist in this country. In other countries, in most European countries, the cable in the ground is a public utility, and ISPs compete on what's called the last mile, right? The last mile to your house, they will compete on services, bonuses, extras, and that's why there's actual competition amongst internet service providers in most EU states. In America, when you put fiber or cable in the ground, the company that laid it owns it. No one else can use it unless you are paying the company and leasing it from them directly. And do you think Comcast is going to lease their fiber network to, Tomnet? It's just not going to happen. They're not going to invite in competition, or they're going to charge me so much that it doesn't make sense for me to be in business anyway. And laying your own network is extremely expensive, prohibitively expensive. The only reason cable companies were able to do it in the first place is because tax breaks. They were incentivized to. The government gave them money to make sure that a bunch of Americans got a fast internet connection.
And I mean, they're still doing it, but obviously the Verizon, I keep on saying this, in 2007, Verizon petitioned the New Jersey state legislature saying we're going to blanket 98% of New Jerseyans with high-speed internet, defined as 25 megabits or whatever, 10 at the time. In 2015, they barely built out their Fios network, and they went back and they said, well, our 4G LTE is equivalent to Fios. It's the same speed, and therefore we have fulfilled our obligation. And the New Jersey state legislator said, yep, you did. And that was the end of it. So the people who really needed high-speed internet didn't get it. It ended the competition. Verizon took the tax breaks, invested it, and who knows what they did with it. And I'm still mad about that.
They bought Yahoo.
Yeah, they took that money and they bought Yahoo, and they bought all the internet blogs and everything else. But look, it's tomorrow. Whatever happens on the 14th is going to happen on the 14th. What I hope somebody, I mean, I guess Congress now can make some law or can do something. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'm hoping that what I would have maybe liked to see is, I understand competition. I understand this idea. Maybe say, you know what, for the next few years, we're going to see how this goes. We're going to really look at it and see how bad this could be. And then maybe in a few years when wireless has parity or something like that, or we move on to the next thing, then maybe we can see. But for right now, all the bits need to be the same. I'm trying to be devil's advocate here. I'm trying to figure out what we can say to make the conservatives happy, to say, yes, we have competition. I think maybe we should allow the competition rather than stop them before we say, okay, net neutrality, just go out the window.
Yeah, just a real quick aside, because I know we're way over.
That's okay.
Wireless has a finite amount of bandwidth just due to the nature of physics, right? There's only so much radio spectrum available, right? And it's already a crowded place. You can only fit so many bits into a certain segment of radio spectrum. So just saying wireless, it'll solve everyone's problems. Well, no, because at 6 p.m. when everyone's streaming Netflix on their wireless ISP, we're going to run into these same issues, except the wireless ISPs can't just provision more capacity. That's not exactly the way it works, right? They would have to literally create radio space in the air to carry more bits without them colliding or running over each other, and it's not going to happen because physics and reality. I think what's going to happen tomorrow is, after the vote, it's probably going to be a lawsuit. Probably either tomorrow or the next day. There's going to be a lawsuit. Hopefully, there will be an injunction, and this law just sits. They hit the emergency stop button, and nothing happens until all of this moves through an official court system. I have no guarantees on that, but that's my current idea.
Or it goes in, and then, I mean, as quickly as they put it in, they can take it out. But I think you're right. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Remember, two things are coming up. In the United States, we have a major tax plan that needs to apparently be done before January, before the new Democrat gets seated, and the government shutdown, which is before Christmas. So those two things have to be done first. And I don't think that all of a sudden on January 1st they're going to say, well, the FCC decided to do this, we're just going to sign this into law. I think it's going to take a while, and I have a feeling it's going to end up, the FCC is going to propose to Congress that they should abandon Title II things. And it may happen a little bit, like you said, a lawsuit will happen, and then people are going to relook at it. Or it's going to hit Congress, where their constituents are going to have to pay for extra bandwidth. Like if you want to go to the whitehouse.gov site, you're going to have to pay more. And then it's going to bother somebody, and they're going to put a law to say it's going to be like that. It's going to be death by 1,000 paper cuts. .coms are okay, but .nets are not. And then it's going to be .nets and then .orgs and everything else.
To give a great analogy, and I want to attribute this, I think, to The Verge. I apologize if I'm getting this wrong. Somebody wrote, it would be like if you own a business on Main Street and then somebody made Main Street a toll road for people walking or driving. What would that do to your business, right? How would that impact you? And that's a great, easy to understand analogy that you can give to friends, family, strangers on the street, scream it from the mountains, because that's exactly what's about to happen to the internet. Get out there, call your Congress critters, protest in the street, scream from the mountain. We have to save the internet.
So again, you're hearing this now. The episode won't be posted till next week. We'll have a little follow-up next week. By the way, we are way over, so we're going to end right now. That's okay. It happens every once in a while. Anyway, we will hopefully see you next week with hopefully good news, but we don't know yet. So anyway, everyone, have a good time, and we'll see you next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye.